You're trying to get that Swirly Bokeh in the background of your image, and you don't know, should I do the Helios 44M, or should I go and buy the 75 1.5 Swirly Bokeh from TTArtisan? But which one do you buy? Because you see, these are both great lenses. And before you buy either of these, make sure you buy this, the M42 adapter. Now, this is an M42 to E mount because I shoot with Sony. Now, depending on what you use, obviously you need to get it M42 to whatever mount you use. So M42 to L, M42 to Z mount, M42 to EF mount, whatever it might be. That's what you're gonna need in order to use either of these lenses. I have my tripod set up right here, so that way when my wife gets done with her makeup, she can stand right over there and we can get started doing this very quick because I'm gonna be holding a baby while I'm trying to take these photos and videos. And the thing to remember with these lenses is they're both manual focus, so you're gonna need something like focus peaking to know exactly where your focus is at versus autofocus where you can just hit the button and focus is in and we're good to go. So it takes a little more time to get set up. So that's why I'm gonna be using a tripod for these photos and for these videos. But let's jump into the comparison. So that was just a fun little B-roll sequence, and we're gonna dive into some photos really quick. But one of the things I wanted to mention about that B-roll sequence, because you're gonna definitely notice the difference between that and these photos, is that you're gonna notice a little more compression, and that's because I shoot with the A7 IV. A7 IV, when you're shooting at 60 frames a second, it's actually cropped in at a 1.5 times. So instead of it being a 58 millimeter, it's more like an 87.5 millimeter. And the 75 is more like a 112.5. The other thing is they might have been a little off focus because she's moving, and shooting at an f2 and a f1.5, you have a very, very razor thin margin to get your subject in focus, especially when they're moving back and forth. So if you're shooting wide open, just keep that in mind because it's a manual focus lens, it's gonna be a little more difficult. But now let's dive into these photos so we can look at how the image comes out. All right, so we're gonna start off with the Helios. Look at that swirl. You see that swirl right here? You see just how nice that is? That is why people love this lens. You know, you have this beautiful swirl around her head and it just brings her into focus a lot more. But one of the things to note, just like any lens, you have some chromatic aberration. You're gonna have that. It's an older lens. This one was from 1959, but Lightroom has a button. We just hit remove and it gets rid of that chromatic aberration. Now the chromatic aberration also looks worse because of the colors of green I'm using. So because of that, it kind of makes those greens pop out a little more. Just look at these bokeh balls right here. I mean, just look at that. And then when we go around her, you see it around her head right there. I mean, it just makes you focus on her and you get all this great bokeh in the background. What helps is there's trees back here and there's light coming through the trees. And now we'll jump to the TTArtisan and just look at this swirl we have right here. Just look at this whole background and just how much different it looks. Almost everything is swirling. Like even these fence posts you can see that are very, very weird looking in the background that normally I would go through and edit them out, but just for effect, just you can kind of even see the fence post starting to swirl. Just like the Helios, we're gonna have that chromatic aberration. We can see it right here and we're gonna have to remove it. And even when we remove it, you can see on this lens at an f1.5, you're definitely gonna notice it. So keep that in mind that this one does have a little more chromatic aberration on it. Yes, you can remove it, but it doesn't always remove it. You may have to work with the colors you're using if you want to get rid of it. But overall, that's something that not many people are gonna notice just because you have that amazing swirly background. So now is a side-by-side comparison. On the left is the Helios, on the right is the TTArtisan. That swirl on the right-hand side is definitely really noticeable. On the left-hand side, you notice it, but it's not as drastic as it looked. When we compared it to the other one, then you're definitely gonna notice that swirl a lot more. But when you compare it to something that has like a massive swirl, it doesn't even look like it really has a swirl at all. But that's the thing. One has a massive swirl and one has one that's not as big of a deal, not as noticeable. It's noticeable, but it's not as drastic as the TTArtisan on the right, which makes you focus on your subject a lot more. The one on the left still looks different and a little more natural than the one on the right.
Key difference is weight, 590 grams. We can see how big that TTArtisan lens is, whereas the Helios is about 220 to 300 grams, depending on the version you get, because the Helios was made for about 50 years over in the USSR. The TTArtisan is a f1.5, whereas the Helios is a f2. They're both going to give you that nice vintage feel, but the cool thing about the TTArtisan is actually trying to be a carbon copy of the Biotar 75 1.5. To me, the biggest key difference is the price point. The TTArtisan is $269, whereas the Helios is between $50 to $100. You're gonna have to buy the Helios used, maybe off of eBay or another third-party place that is gonna sell it, whereas the TTArtisan you can buy new. I know this wasn't a super in-depth review, and part of the reason for that is the fact that I've already done reviews on the Helios, on the 75, and actually on the 35 1.4. I'll drop those links down below if you would like to check them out. But I appreciate you hanging out with me. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you've got comments and complaints, give it a thumbs down and drop those comments down below, because this is the first time I've actually reviewed two lenses together, like side by side. So I'm trying to learn more about doing that. So if you've got questions or critiques where I can get better, you know, hit that thumbs down button. I don't care. It just lets me learn what I can do better.